Good morning and welcome to this roundtable on travel organized by Ladies Who Lead. Hi everyone, I'm Taruna Seth. I'm the Navigator-in-Chief and co-founder at Encompass Experiences. We are a conscious travel company that specializes in curating immersive journeys within India and all across the world. So welcome everyone, and very glad to be here. Ladies Who Lead is truly an empowering platform that's for women leaders and entrepreneurs to make an impact and share their experiences, and I truly feel privileged to be a part of it. This pandemic has been a period of great learning, massive transformation, and constant adaptation for travel industry. Now with the coronavirus cases going down and travel restrictions easing up, this just might be the year we have all been waiting for. We have a stellar panel of women leaders from travel to weigh in on what to expect in this digital age of travel. Welcome audience, and we're going to get right into the introductions. So we have with us 5 industry insiders. First up, we have Sonavi Kaicker. She's the CEO of Neemrana Hotels. Sonavi calls herself a non-hotelier hotelier because she never studied hospitality but psychology as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, and then branched off to management, bringing all that experience to Neemrana Hotels, dedicated to conserving India's architectural ruins while enhancing the overall guest experience. We have next up Shoba, Mohan, founder partner Rare India. Shoba is a strong advocate for conscious luxury travel and has made it a mission to help small privately boutique hotels to reach their full potential well before the pandemic and through the COVID crisis as well. Shoba is passionate about sustainability in travel and strives to make this conversation more mainstream. Priyanka Nijhawan, Director Representations, Nijhawan Group. Priyanka is an alumna of King's College London and has over 12 years of experience in the business of tourism and successfully represents tourism boards, top-tier luxury hospitality brands and tourist attractions from across the world. Next up, we have Meeta, Kalra, Executive Director, Business Development, La Passage India Journeys. With over 25 years of experience that spans across 3 continents and different fields, Meeta found her niche in travel. When she's not writing or creating the perfect itineraries for her clients, you can find her playing and taking care of her 13 dogs and 6 cats. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. And last but not the least, we have Seema Roy, Area Manager Director for South Asia, Middle East and Africa, Preferred Hotels and Resorts. Seema has played a key role in successfully amplifying brand awareness of Preferred Hotels and Resorts. She's responsible for developing and executing the company's marketing, loyalty program, regional alliance and partnership efforts. Welcome. All right, so we'll dive straight into it. So I'm going to come to you, Sonavi, first. Over the last 2 years, many Indian hotels have witnessed a great insurgence of domestic travelers for obvious reasons. In the digital, is the digital strategy any different to attract a domestic traveler vis-a-vis an international traveler?
So I think the answer to that is actually yes and no, because the ethos and the USP of the brand, for instance, for us at Neemrana, it remains the same. So we don't really look at it as an approach to say that, is a foreign traveler looking for something different. But at the same time, you may have an Indian family that's looking at, experiential travel, and they want to ensure that the property is family friendly because you have different generations which are traveling together. You may have a foreigner coming in who wants to ensure that, he or she is in a, safe environment. So I think there are different aspects. But I wouldn't really categorize these as something that a domestic traveler is looking at and something that a foreign traveler is looking at. I think every traveler's needs are actually tailor-made according to their own requirements. And Neemrana, of course, specializes now in ensuring that if somebody wants something tailor-made, we do it exactly the way they want it to be.
So what has your experience been like in the last 2 years, if I were to focus specially? I mean, what was the percentage earlier, domestic vis-a-vis international travelers pre-COVID? What was the percentage like?
So I'll actually I'll give you a little bit of historical information as well to give you a little bit more perspective into the way we've evolved. Neemrana initially had about 60% travelers coming in from different countries, and 40% were domestic travelers. And then I think there was, a very, very key transformation which happened over the last decade or so. And you had many more Indians that were more interested in their own heritage and in traveling out and discovering, their own roots. So, for us, it's actually been a very gradual change. And that's why the pandemic did not hit us the way it probably hit some of the other brands, because we already had a dedicated domestic clientele that was visiting. So even pre-COVID, I think we had about 80% travelers that were Indian, and obviously for about 1.5 years nearly, we were relying on them. And I think that's a matter of great pride, in fact, for us, because we're an Indian brand.
Absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of brands and hospitality brands and hotels realize, that, India is a great source market in itself. And which, and obviously for many brands, maybe not Neemrana, that strategy kind of pivoted during COVID. So Shoba, I'll come to you next. You obviously have a great insight into the travel industry and how it has evolved over the last 2 decades. At a macro level, how have the economics changed in the world of travel in the last 2 years? Are you seeing a dip in the ticket size?
In terms of the kind of pricing?
Yes, and
actually, on the contrary, and just to take off where she left, where domestic tourism is a big part, going forward is going to be a big part of at least where the hoteliers, you can be a specialist in inbound or domestic, but a hotelier can't make that choice anymore. Right. And that is often the case with small boutique hoteliers. It's easier for them to deal with the inbound, especially if the owner run. The inbound is a very, I won't say it's a non-demanding market, but it's, for them, even a bullock cart ride is like a big thing. So those kind of offerings have had to change. But that said, that I've noticed that some of our very high ticket hotels did extremely well without any concessions being made. What they've had to do is a bit of attitude change. Like she said, the Indian market, what they want and what a foreigner wants are two very different things.
Right.
When a classic example is a lovely hotel, is a lovely place in front of a reservoir. An inbound traveler is happy to sit on a deck, take his book, read, and have a beer by the side. But an Indian traveler wants something more. So it's what you do with your hotel, I think, which should make the thing. So I don't think the ticket price was anything to, and you are a good example. Your clients are a good example of that. And my one worry is that the minute the pandemic happened and they said, okay, the domestic tourists are coming, everybody made a beeline to reduce their prices. That's not the point. The hotels that reduced their offerings and said, okay, you don't need to do both the safaris in a lodge scenario, and said, okay, you can choose to do one safari if you want. So those are the kind of strategic changes to the offering you made, not to the general upkeep or your general ethos or anything around a property. Also, I would like to say here that you run a good hotel. What is an inbound hotel and what's a domestic hotel? You primarily run a good hotel. You run great operations, because a good housekeeping is a good housekeeping.
Right.
So those kind of things, we often heard in my 18 odd years, ye property domestic ke liye nahi hai. This is not. I don't think that is of relevance anymore. We haven't invested our attention to the domestic market quite a lot, and of course it's a growing market. There are demands. You can say that this is a hotel that cannot take children, for instance. So that's a possibility. But to make it and categorize it and, say this is not a domestic hotel, or identifiable luxury elements and say, oh, this is not luxury enough. Those things I think are barriers to be broken. And once that is done, I think every hotel will have a 12-year calendar to, put out various marketing ideas, various offering strategies for every market to take and pick it up from.
No, that's very interesting, and I think it's also kind of obviously, I'm not generalizing here, but it's also led to a lot of kind of a change of mindset for a certain domestic brands, some even very well-known inbound brands that have been doing well. But I think there has been a mindset change, and like you said, it's not about reducing the prices, but it's about adding the offerings and being more kind of cognizant of the fact of what the Indian, the well-traveled Indian tourist or traveler wants, who's kind of been all over the world, really. And yeah, they may be quote unquote more demanding in certain respects than. Would you like to elaborate on that? You said something about like a inbound traveler just sitting by a lake, but the Indians want more.
Want more, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a very like a looking at things with a pink lens. When the marketing side of things, people will say, oh, the domestic market booming, but on the ground, if you actually go to hotels, they still say, ab bas bahut ho gaya, thode gore aane do. It does happen,
Yes.
right? Because we have this whole atithi devo bhava stuff that we've kind of fed our people, and both in India and abroad, has to stop. Atithi is not Devo Bhava. You cannot get away with nonsense. Every property, and I've seen this abroad, I've traveled to South Africa and things like that, where people tell you, listen, this is not allowed. You're in a lodge, you can't run around, your children can't run around. You'll step over a snake, and the children immediately back out. To tell people that you are in someone's home, and this is a property, there are other guests around, keep your decibel levels low. This is a part of teaching or the evolving traveler, which we are not able to do. Somehow to do everything, bend over backwards and listen to everything, whoever. Earlier they used to do it with the American market because they were high paying markets, and they used to make, stupid demands. For us, the best market to promote our hotels to was the English man, because he had a cultural connection. He thought he was better than us, and he had that colonial mindset, and he loved it when somebody came and when the bakshish was happening. All that is gone, right? So that learning from all our experiences has to now go down to the Indian market and say, listen, you're coming here, this is a set of rules. And there are hoteliers who did this way back in the 80s and 90s. There was a lovely hotel in Glenmore called Glenmore Cottages in Dharamshala who used to say, who would look at a car coming up, he'll say, here's your draft, kindly go, there is no more, because he saw the amount of noise they were making, and that they didn't go with the because it also disturbs other guests, right? So this kind of thing can be put into your narrative. You can actually say that this is a home, we would like to, and there is nothing wrong with that.
Right. I think it's also about kind of nudging your clients to the right property fit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That's also
absolutely. And we constantly tell you. I mean, imagine there's somebody paying 40,000 rupees. I mean, both of them are paying 40,000 rupees, and you have how much ever you separate them, people running around and making a lot of noise, it does hamper with your, and you don't pay for that kind of stuff, right? Absolutely. So I think a little bit of, knowledge transfer from tour operators side, hoteliers being very strict with what they want to do. And I think independent hoteliers can do this better than large brands, because large brands have to, they have the thing. But in fact, individual hoteliers, and some of my hoteliers have had this thing on their TripAdvisor, and they say, Shoba, don't do anything to change it. I want them to know that these people are very strict. They want your car, you can't honk, you can't this thing, you can't sit here. And he says, I want that to be there. Because people should know what kind, and I've seen hotels book, and they say, oh, I saw the TripAdvisor review, and this is exactly the kind of hotel I want to go to.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So Priyanka, on to you next. In terms of brand expectations vis-a-vis travel, earlier it was all about, larger than life road shows, and I believe you just concluded a few road shows. Has that changed post-COVID, or is it still all guns blaring out?
While the whole pandemic was on, and of course all of us moved on to, the virtual world, and I was in fact looking at, some of the things from 2020, and I remember the first webinar we did was very experimental. So it was a web meeting. We still hadn't discovered that there was a difference between a web meeting and a webinar. And I remember we had a limit of 300 on that. And the moment we hit 300, we were getting frantic messages because people were trying to log in. In 2020, the first wave was, it wasn't bad. People were really free. They were just stuck at home. They were willing to learn. So I remember very last minute, we actually had to upgrade the software. The 300 became 600 and it became 900, and we did a couple of webinars. So that was not one off. We of course moved on from web meetings to webinars, and we did so many webinars where we would have, 900 to 1,000 people actually logging in. But towards the end of it, which is towards, the end of 2021, we realized that when we wanted to, conduct a webinar, it was completely reducing, even to get 100, 150 people while things were still shut. But I think people had hit the webinar fatigue. So come March 2022, when we were planning our roadshows, we had like we were looking at two scenarios. We were arguing with hotels saying, what if the COVID wave hits? Are we going to get 100% refund? It came down to, that we could kind of reuse it within 6 months. And our best case scenario was, where everybody would have to be masked up, we'll have to see vaccination certificates. The third scenario, which really ended up happening, was it was all out in the open. Nobody was really even masked up. People were, the moment everybody saw each other, they were jumping on each other, saying hellos because they hadn't met in for 2 years. And finally, I had a couple of delegates who'd, flown in from Canada and Dubai. And I warned them. I said, there are enough people, in the market. You can keep your mask up, but you will find those few people who will walk up to you and say, get that mask down. And it really did happen, because these people are familiar with the market. So that's the kind of big change. So, between physical roadshows and virtual, I think physical roadshows is definitely the way forward. Will we start hitting the mad numbers that we used to? I mean, back in the day, I remember our target numbers sometimes on our big Dubai tourism roadshows used to be around 300, which we are looking at probably restricting to 150. But going forward, I'm pretty sure it's going to start coming back to normal numbers. What I don't see happening is, all of us say probably traveling to Mumbai to have that one odd meeting. Or the connect that now easily happens between an overseas office and an Indian office, where again we don't need everyone to fly in if they want to meet a couple of people. So that's kind of moved on to back-to-back Zoom meetings.
Right.
But I think roadshows, exhibitions, just for the lack of physical meetings in the last 2 years, I think they're back with a whole bang.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of experiences Zoom fatigue, and now everybody wants FaceTime, like real FaceTime.
Yes, so I think moving forward, it's going to be a mix of both. But yeah, with roadshows carrying on, but individual meetings being on Zoom.
Great, that's good. That's good news. All right, so Meeta, as a DMC, now over the course of the pandemic, of course, with no inbound traffic, Airbnb and homestays, I mean, they've been quite a flavor. How does that impact, or how do you think that's going to impact bookings for you? Do you see a shift in long-term trends?
So, okay, as a DMC or a destination management company, it depends on the mix of business you have, right? So for someone like Le Passage to India or someone like a DMC, we typically deal with inbound travel. So of course, when the commercial airspace closed, it all dried up. And the last 2 years have been exceedingly hard for us. It's not the hotel space, it's not the homestay space, it's been us not having clients. So yes, the Airbnb space, the platforms, the aggregators that were offering these kind of experiences did well with the domestic market. The domestic market is familiar with India, right? We were never discovering our country before, but now we are. Right. So we were traveling a lot more, but I know Goa, I know Mumbai. So I'm okay to take those chances. Friends can recommend places, things like that. It's a lot more comforting for me as an Indian to travel into someone else's home. Hopefully March 27th, in a couple of days, my airspace opens and the inbound travel starts resuming. I know, right? Inbound travel starts resuming. Now the inbound traveler is always looking for reliability, especially in a specialized destination like India. So for them, things like, expectations. Will it meet my expectations? Health and safety standards, service standards, basic service standards that could be boring in the past are now the guardrails of any tour. They're exceedingly important, right? Because we are going to have to live with the pandemic. It's not going away, but people have to get out. So I think for the inbound traveler, the Airbnb, offering has not been a disruptor like, people were expecting. And I'm again obviously talking about inbound to India. What we are doing, and we've always been doing even before Airbnb came into work, is homestays or small boutique properties like Shoba's or the Neemranas that are there in the world, where the stay is a nice mix to the hotel offering that you have. So a lot of seasoned travelers, younger travelers, tend to opt for those kind of mixes in their itineraries. Maybe that will be more going forward. We've definitely used 2 years of not having any work to build up on our product portfolios, to identify more hotels that will offer this kind of change. But as far as being a disruptor to the inbound tourism, I don't see it as yet.
All right. So I think, would you agree, obviously like Airbnb, for instance, came up with experiences during the pandemic. I mean, it had started pre, but it kind of took a lot of traction during it. Do you think going forward, there'll be a higher kind of, price on experiences vis-a-vis where they stay? Like you said, like the smaller homestays, I mean, those obviously are going to get more traction. But is it going to be more around the experiences that, say, if it's like a owner-owned hotel, maybe somebody like Shoba represents? So would it be like, okay, having a meal with the owner and interacting with the local community? So will that become kind of the fulcrum of the whole stay for somebody inbound? Or that's always been the case, but do you think now it's going to be more of a focus?
I think the mix might change a little bit, but I don't think it will become the sole purpose of the trip. A lot of people come to India, and I'm speaking from a DMC point of view, to experience the country, right? And there are different parts to it. Accommodation is just one part of it. Experiences with homeowners and hotels is, it's a large part, but it's not the only part. So, but yes, so around the trip, interactions with locals, those special moments that have, the power to touch you. It's that memory that you create, that is your wow moment that you take back, right? The boasting to the Joneses or keeping up with the Joneses, those kind of experiences, depending on the budget of every trip, all of those experiences are there. So yes, but will it be the fulcrum around which it is? Yes and no. I mean, it all depends. But and the hotels, obviously, homestays, hotels are about 60 to 70% of any trip. So yes, but they're not the only part.
Right. So Seema, coming to you now. Keeping in mind the current scenario, how do your advertising spends look like? Are you largely focusing on digital, or are you still investing in traditional media?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's great to be a part of the panel. So coming to the question, like I think some other people also said, there's a bit of a shift in the mix. So historically preferred, so first of all, I think a disclaimer, we work with a very, very diverse group of hotels. We represent 700 of independent hotels in about 70 countries worldwide. Independent are also smaller regional chains. So quite similar to what you mentioned, owner-driven properties, but these are hotels. These are, they could be smaller with just a couple of rooms going up to 700-800 rooms as well, but these are all independent hotels that offer authentic curated experiences. So, but whilst I speak about preferred, I'll mention a little bit of what we also witnessed that hotels have embraced over the last 2 years. Historically, we've worked with both. We had a mix of print as well as digital. Print is primarily to drive inspiration. It's, to inspire people to travel, whilst digital was more transaction-led, more conversion-led. In the last 2 years, a lot of print media was halted purely because of safety protocols, etc. High touch. So that wasn't happening. So a lot of the spends were pivoted towards regional tourism, domestic tourism, and also in the digital medium. Going forward, I think it is going to be still a hybrid, way forward, but the mix may have changed. So, earlier, if there was a certain percentage you were spending on print and certain on digital, last 2 years have accelerated that spend on the digital side. From the hotel's point of view, I think what is happening is if it's a upper upscale or a luxury hotel, that's again a lot more about branding, a lot more about creating that credibility and trust in the brand. Digital print will continue to remain important, and I think certain key media outlets globally, most of those hotels will continue to work with. Hotels that are more, their advertising is more offer driven. It's more transaction led to say, I'm going to send out those offers, attract those consumers and try and convert them. Will probably be more digital. So it will be a mix, but the split may change, in terms of how everyone's investing. So at Preferred, we work very closely with our travel advisors. We have a few on the panel here. We have a great a community of trusted travel advisors who work with our hotels, who support our hotels in creating those experiences. If it's a plain vanilla booking, if it's a commoditized, inventory that you're selling, it's easier to sell that online because it's a plain booking. But when you're looking at an experience, when you're looking at creating that, itinerary, then you probably would want to speak with somebody at the hotel or your travel advisor to be able to guide you, especially if it's your first time in the destination. If you're going to a Goa or, Mumbai, where you know it extremely well, it's easier for you to do it on your own and just go to a website and book, whether it's a third-party website or the hotel website. But when you're really looking for that authentic experience, then you probably would, want some kind of guidance. So I think the hotels are also looking at a mix in the spend. And when I say mix, it's not just between print and digital, it's also between B2B and B2C, because travel advisor community is extremely critical. And I think it'll continue to grow that way.
All right, so Sonavi, I'm going to come to you next. We spoke a little bit about it earlier as well, but what are you doing digitally to enjoy the boom that we're seeing in the domestic travel sector? How are you leveraging it more?
So, Neemrana is actually a heritage brand, but we have a very modern marketing system behind the brand. I would say that, of course, as the pandemic evolved and communication became more and more important. But for us, the strategy was consistent, and we implemented exactly what we believed in. So the website has always been for us paramount. It is the brain of your company. It is the brain of your brand. So I think things like how often do you update your website, even apart from your social media portals? I think these are the questions that our team started asking ourselves. And also in terms of how is it designed, is it static, is it dynamic? I think these are the questions. So really getting into the nitty gritties of every web page, every photograph, how you communicate it. Secondly, social media, of course, became more important. There were some brands that just stopped communicating with their clients, and I think that was a huge mistake. For us, we said, okay, let's keep it simple, let's keep it positive. Everybody's going through hard times. People are having to suddenly, work from home. They have little children. They have so many new experiences. But let's continue to talk a little bit about, what they can look forward to as the times, change and the pandemic, goes away. For us, again, digitally, we've also been, I think we're conservative and we have a hybrid model in the sense that, as she mentioned, it's not just reliance on one particular, forum. So print media continues to be important for us as well. Digitally, we have a lot of focus on our SEO. It's been there every month. We actually see according to the season, according to the destination. So there's, I would say, a fair mix in terms of, what we continue to do. But the pandemic, I think really the one biggest learning for us was to continue to actually communicate with our clients and to see things from their perspective.
Yeah. So I think that's been one of the greatest learnings in the pandemic. And also, like Shoba, coming to you, it was amazing that, like how Sonavi said, it was about like continuing that communication. Even if in the first 6 months of the pandemic, nobody was traveling, but it was still very important to keep that communication going. And you obviously did a great job at it. So do you think, Shoba, now the world that we're in, there's full-scale war going on, the fuel prices are rising. Do you think this is going to have an impact in India in the domestic segment?
In terms of pricing?
No, just generally. Do you see maybe later part of the year, or do you see some sort of some impact here, or inbound perhaps a little bit when it does start?
The hotels are actually, really pushing at the fences to say we want to hike our prices because especially remote hotels, their operation costs get very, very high. Even a bottle of wine is a 5-hour drive to the closest big city. That said, I completely agree with her that, the communication, your communication should be steady and constant, so that whether you're a B2B, whether you're a B2B operator or you are wanting to get into the B2C segment, that brand communication should never stop. And imagine this, when the pandemic hit us, and there were all kinds of, when you say sustainability, they would say, oh, we don't want a basic rustic hotel. So the codes for things like that did not exist. You have a luxury code, right? Gold, chocolate brown, red, this is all your codes for luxury. There was no code for sustainability. So putting that out, what does exactly sustain, which is why we started saying conscious travel. Luxury doesn't necessarily mean that you need to dump everything on Mother Earth and let her, deal with it. It also meant where you draw the line. So this move from large buffets to farm to table, so those kind of things that kind of came into this, and those are expensive.
Right.
It's that is what people have to understand, why sustainable hotels are not cheap. So that they have to constantly do that. Yeah, what could actually save you some costs and money is choose to walk instead of taking a jeep safari. Why don't you walk in the jungles? And there are lots of hotels offering you things like that. Why don't you take a bike ride? I mean, cycle around the village to discover the village, for instance. So where from the cost perspective, there is going to be a little hike, and rightly so, because a small 12-room hotel has very high cost when compared to a large group hotel. There is no way I can lose money here but gain money here, and I can put all of it together and I'm profit making, right? So there will be a lot of pressure for higher tariffs in smaller hotels. But what are we comparing it with, right? I still think Indian hotels, where they're small boutique, and for what we offer and for the kind of service standards we have, we are very, very well priced. It's just the, because you're a developing nation, they think that, oh, why is India so expensive? And I see most of this coming from NRIs. I mean, saying, oh, but I pay 250 rupees for a taxi. Well, no, yeah, but that time you probably earned 1,000 rupees, but So pricing is a challenge, is really a challenge. And where the digital thing troubles me is that it kind of democratizes the pricing thing and says, less, take more for less, take more for less. But that's not what it is. I want to sell on value. It's like a piece of art. Yeah. Every boutique standalone hotel is like a piece of art. Nobody can say you are expensive than X hotel standing in a Y destination. Right. Because I know what went into it. We have loans to pay. A heritage hotel, they have loans to pay to kind of restore a heritage hotel, or even to maintain a 5-bedroom heritage hotel in the middle of Shimla. It takes a lot of money. So to compare a Chapsley with an Oberoi that is there and say, oh, but the Oberoi is at half your price. I mean, well, it's not an apple.
Really
that understanding has to come out, and which is why to sell on value, and I keep telling my hoteliers, I mean, don't jump the gun, don't reduce your prices, let's sell on value. And to include the travel agent in this business, which is where the digital, and I won't agree with anyone who says we are completely driven by tour operators, because in this day and age, you need tour operators. Because I believe one tour operator is equal to 1,000 direct customers. At least from an advertising point of view, what you would spend 1,000 or a lakh of rupees for a one-page, in a Condé Nast or something like that, you give it to a tour operator as 20% over a period of time, and that guy does even lot more in lot more markets than it. So that thing has to come back. The tour operator perspective has to come back, which is why those costs. And every time you put something out online, which is, cheap, I mean, the best rate deal, best top 10 deals and things like that, don't forget the tour operator. Because if that booking comes, yes, go ahead and sell direct. But if it's coming back through the tour operator, he has to be protected. I mean, that's my only thing where pricing is concerned. And I have this fight with my hoteliers all the time, so... Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but I get very upset with this pricing thing, because this whole India is expensive. I've heard this all the time. They'll say India is expensive. Hotels come on rare and they become expensive. I mean, no. It's simply because all of these things cost money.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, again, coming back to communication, and that's why it's so important to communicate this, that you're literally comparing, and we kind of face that in what we do as well all the time, like people comparing apples to oranges, and it's just not how it works. Every hotel has its own USP, and and especially the owner-driven and owner-owned hotels are special in their own way, which, I mean, of course, there's a client for every product, right? So it's also about the fit.
Yeah, that's the other very important thing. To say this client is not for me.
Exactly. So
and which is where the tour operator comes in. I've seen direct clientele, they go there, they book online, they see a great thing, and they actually reach there and say, but this is not what I bargained for. Yeah. That's where the tour operator comes in, especially with boutique hotels.
Absolutely.
It's very, very, and I think when they say the tour operators are going to come back, and God bless that ilk, but I think a tour operator's role in this, in the pandemic times, I think has been very, very crucial. And I hope more and more hotels can recognize this and kind of give a cult status to tour operators and say, that commission thing that they keep talking about. And I think it's always a closed door conversation. I say, why are you afraid to tell your client that, you know, you mark it up. It's your service fee. You didn't even know about this destination, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Right? Why is it a closed door conversation? And it has to be inviolate. Nobody touches that money. Aap directly aa jaiye, hum aapko, hello, what's
That's borderline unethical, but that's
Very,
a
very,
conversation to be had another
but
day.
there people were, I mean, everybody was doing it. I mean, I know large hotels who print it and say book directly, will give you discount. I mean, for what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, so that's something that needs to be discussed and kind of delved into. So Priyanka, in the context of the representation side of the business, how do you plan digital media strategy for travel and hospitality for your clients?
So actually taking a bit from what everybody said, right? You know, digitization, I think it was there, but it kind of just got accelerated during the pandemic. When we are now looking at planning a strategy, it's not literally a digital media strategy. It has to be a hybrid, just like what Seema said, right? It's just that in the last 2 years, where the print media was completely out, and when one had to, you know, needed to be in touch with the market, digital media was our only way. You know, like touching on what you and I were discussing earlier, I think one of the key reasons where Dubai kind of stayed ahead compared to the rest of the tourism destinations within India, of course, besides the point that it was open, it was also because we were constantly in touch in terms of Dubai tourism. You know, even when nothing was happening, we were saying Dubai is sanitized, Dubai is clean. Post New Year celebration, we were advertising as to, you know, sending out the messages to say how sanitization was happening. Similarly, so these were the kind of similar messages we were sending out for our various hotels as well. But now, as market is going to open up, for us, it is not going to be only the digital media. Of course, it's become a big part. The whole sending out the bloggers to various destinations, having them post Insta, you know, everything has really become far bigger than what it used to be. And of course, like, you know, like just like what Shoba was saying, it's far more value for money. But having said that, the traditional medium where we have the various tour operators who advertise in a Gujarati newspaper or a Maharashtrian newspaper, back in the day, I remember in 2020, 21, when things were opening up and we were discussing, and we, you know, even the tour operators were like, you know, when things open up, we'll see how this changes. But what I'm seeing is the hybrid mix has probably changed, but it hasn't gone. There are still people who want to open the newspaper, who want to see that ad, and they want to see the itinerary, and they want to then call that tour operator and can kind of move ahead with that. So coming back to what you asked, going forward for us, it's going to be a mix. It's not going to be purely digital. We're going to take the strength that it has brought, but at the same time, the traditional medium is here to stay. So it's going to be fairly a 360 medium for us when we're looking at advertising for our various representations.
So Meeta, we spoke a little bit about experiences that you offer to your clients through the DMC. Going forward, package deals or curated experiences, where is the needle pointing, especially for the high end? I mean, of course, the high end, it's quite obvious, but I'm talking maybe not the super high end, but kind of the luxury travel with travelers. So has that kind of shifted?
No. So curated experience, obviously the correct answer here is, you know, yes, the needle is pointing towards curated experiences. But I do want to say something in this forum. Just because it's a package deal doesn't mean it's not curated, right? Curated is personalized. To a certain segment of the audience or your client, the price could be the curation, right? They are looking for that experience which that price gives them. So just because package deal has a bad name, it doesn't mean that it's not curated. And I think it's a real shame that we all tend to, you know, thumb our noses at them and say, oh, it's a package deal. There's a lot of process that goes into selecting the right hotels, getting that correct price point. And most package deals tend to have a lot of supplements added onto that package. So you buy into something and then there are supplements where you end up making a fair bit on that file or that tour, right? Remember that. So experiences, activities are all supplements and it's all curated obviously within price points. Now, if you come back and as the budget and that trip grows, and then we really like those clients because it's an easy, you know, it's an easy way to just package the entire thing. The difference is they are not supplements, they're included in the tour. But the options, the personalizations, the exclusivity, obviously, you know, gets magnified and there are more options available to you. But everybody's looking for that special thing. I mean, it's probably going to sound like a repetitive theme with me, but everybody's looking for that wow moment, right? Even the budget traveler, or what we are calling a budget traveler, starts at a budget and then is okay to spend extra money somewhere to experience that. So curated experiences have always been the thing. Experiential travel is now just becoming more buzzy than ever before, but we were always doing it in little ways, whether it's Varanasi or it's, you know, that whole Aarti Tikka when you enter. It doesn't matter at what level. Yeah. It's just the scope and depth of that. You know, and you'd know it as well, you know, selling experiences. You know, there are experiences that you can offer that, you know, are available to most people, and then there are exceedingly select experiences that are based on a budget. But the entire gamut is an experience. So
that's no, and thank you for that you know, distinction, because you're right. A lot of times, especially in travel, package deal does have kind of a negative connotation. But you're right. There's a lot of work that goes into even a program that's not super high end, and we experience that as well. I mean, I would say the same amount of effort goes in it. It's just that, you know, overall the trip costs less, and you know, and so the lesser amount trickles into the company. But however, it's the same amount of effort, and you're absolutely right on that. So Seema, I'm going to ask you the $1 million question now. So booking directly on hotel websites is cheaper, fact or myth?
All right. Well, there could be two ways to look at it, from a hotelier's perspective or from a consumer perspective. But I know, I mean, you know, looking at from a traveler's perspective, cheaper, I wouldn't say always, no. I think hotels do put in a lot of effort to try and maintain rate parity. And when I say this, I mean at least on the online channels, because they have contracts, and those could be different year-round, seasonal rates, etc. But in the online space, hotels try their best. Most hotels try their best to maintain rate parity. So it may not be cheaper, but it may bring in more value. So if you book directly on hotel's website, and again, comparisons purely on the online platforms, what happens is your hotel's own client. Today, data is king, right? If you own that customer, you would want to go out of your way to do whatever you can to personalize their stay, offer as much flexibility, and bring in more value. Also, as a customer, when you're booking, again, going back to some of the points we were discussing, when it's not just a plain vanilla booking, and let's say it's a booking where you want to top up with a dinner booking, with a spa reservation, it's a lot more easier to do it on a hotel website directly versus doing it through a third party. Also, in terms of you know, working with the hotel on making some special occasions, you know, having certain bookings done for those, or just again, I think during the pandemic, it was a classic example when social media sites or review sites were full of comments where a lot of customers were complaining about how, you know, refunds could not be processed or cancellations could not be processed because they used a certain technology platform to book, and it wasn't a direct booking at the hotel. So I think that kind of flexibility and value addition is probably what's more important and relevant when you're booking directly with the hotels. I wouldn't say it's necessarily cheaper, because to everybody's point, I think hotels want to hold those prices because there's a reason those prices are there. I think it also gives you a chance to enjoy benefits like off loyalty program, you know, if you book directly with the hotel and not through a third party channel. So I think yes, there are benefits, but again, like I said earlier as well, depending on what is the nature of your travel, what are you booking. If it's again, if it's just a room inventory that you're booking, maybe easier for you to book on whatever app you have on your phone, because it's like an airline seat, right? There's not much of a difference. But if you're looking to book more than that, then perhaps the website would be the way to go.
Sure. So speaking of cancellation policies now, Sonavi, COVID times have created this free cancellation policies, right? And it's kind of, people have gotten so used to that flexibility. I know in the initial months there was a bit of an issue, but then it kind of changed to a very kind of flexible cancellation regime. So how did that impact business, and how do you see it kind of, playing through? Because now people are going to be used to these very lax terms and conditions, and that's not going to be there forever.
Well, this is actually a topic which is very close to my heart, because, we travel as well. And, this is something that everybody's faced at some point or the other, either before the pandemic or during the pandemic. So as a hotelier, you have three options in front of you. One is that you charge retention and you say, thank you very much. This is my company policy. This is black and white. But if you look at it from the customer's perspective, you have to actually put yourself into their shoes. And Neemrana has always been a very humanitarian brand in that sense. So for us, we said, okay, we have to balance, our revenues, and at the same time, we have a fixed number of costs, etc. So we had a very flexible approach, and we didn't think it was ethical to hold on to somebody's money because they forgot to send you an email or to call you at that particular hour. And but at the same time, we had certain criteria that we set to say that, okay, in case of X case, it has to be a credit option, and you can utilize this for a year, even for 2 years. We had many people who were very comfortable with this. There were some guests that said, listen, I'm sitting outside the country, I really don't know when travel is going to open up, I would really appreciate a refund. So we didn't really have a particular policy. We had to actually look at everything from a case to case perspective, and then take a decision. Having said that, I think now hopefully we're out of the pandemic, and we'll have to be, as a hotelier, we'll have to be careful, we'll have to be conservative, because yes, people have started expecting everything to be flexible, and sometimes especially when you're in the season time, you have to plan your calendar, you have to plan your inventory, you have events. You may have said no to a group of people because you had a wedding, and vice versa. So I think these are things that one will have to actually work on as we go along.
That's great. So so Shoba, coming to you, you work with obviously a lot of small owner driven properties. How have they adapted to digitization? I was just curious, because obviously that needle has shifted in the last 2 years. How have they adapted to it?
So, I mean, I would just say 20-80. 20% of them, especially who have larger, they had to per force invest in digital marketing and digital bookings and things like that, and all this dynamic pricing and all. They had to go because they were larger hotels. Most small hotels, for them, digital means they went marketing only. So they just kind of got their social media in order. So for them, they still want the tour operator engagement, because for them it's a easier, not only easier, it's a much more surefire way of getting that right clientele who will appreciate who they are, right? Which is why when I said we're going to do this little event and get hoteliers together, all the owner-run hotels, they said, oh, well, count us in. Because for them to work through tour operators is very important. They will continue to do this, and this part of it will always be there. And the other thing about digital, I mean, with all of this, they can't get their head around 20% on booking.com, and then what would I do with the travel agent? It's just too much. And for a 12-room or an 8-room hotel, it's just unnecessary. Sure. Take it, book. I mean, 20% is what we give, or 25% is what we give. I mean, just take it, you distribute it, whoever you like, you give it to the client, do whatever you want. That headache of doing that is, so for them, digital, for most of them, for the smaller hotels, 80% of them stand alone in remote areas. Also remember, they're not associated with a big city. That doesn't show up on Google. I mean, what are the chances that somebody will look for a hotel in Chhatarpur, which is basically very close to Khajuraho, but so how many people will look for Bhilwara? I mean, we have a lovely hotel there. So for them, digitization doesn't work in that sense, unless of course they kind of lie to the online and say, oh, we are Khajuraho only, just 1 hour away, right? Stuff like that. So I think that thing for smaller hotels will continue for some time before, the younger generation takes over and then kind of gets very smart with it. And that's the beauty. They have to be non-Googleable. That's one of the things I really like, because and a lot of them have problem with online platforms. They can't understand, and they won't understand why are you giving discounts I didn't give you, because they're putting marketing monies and giving 30% off. He says, but we didn't give any 30% off to them. So this is a chain, or this is a cycle that they don't understand. Till then, I mean, my business is safe. I mean, our kind of
so
business.
They need hand-holding.
And the thing about cancellations is where they struggle. Because the online portals, they'll tell you, we'll give you cancellation, take it back, no booking. But the hotelier says, but you can't do that. Because for a limited operation month, like a 6-month operation hotel, the the one room night is the most difficult thing. I mean, if you cancel it, that's it, it's gone. I mean, he's not likely to get it back again. The season is going to end very soon. What does he do with that particular room night? For him, that flexibility of cancellation is not something he can give, which is where, you know, the OTAs kind of pick up and say, we'll give you, and that's what they're playing on just now, but it doesn't work like that.
Especially for the smaller hotels.
With the smaller hotels.
Right. So Priyanka, how do you think leisure travel has changed post the pandemic, and how differently do you think are travelers viewing and you know, in travel in terms of destinations and itineraries? Has something shifted?
Yeah, I think before I come to that, I'll add to what Shoba actually was saying.
Sure.
You know, it's a very interesting thing. We were actually looking at, you know, of course, in the last 2 years, the focus completely came on the luxury traveler. The travel industry literally survived on these luxury travelers who just couldn't sit at home. They were going to go to the overseas destinations that were open. They suddenly discovered the domestic market. They were traveling all over. We actually wanted to, you know, kind of look at some partners where we could do joint marketing activities. And you'll be very surprised to know that a high-end luxury agent, most of them do not even have websites. They actually work on word of mouth. They don't have websites. They don't have social media presence. They're literally working on word of mouth, on relationship. They have those odd timings where, you know, they go and meet their client in the evening. So, you know, so this whole, the luxury travel market especially, I think is completely led by these kind of people. So to say that we are completely moving to digitization, I think there is a certain set, you know, in the whole travel pyramid, the base of the pyramid, I'm sure, you know, your airline bookings are happening online. But as you start moving up, as you start moving up to, you know, holidays, then of course it's more handheld. Especially during the pandemic where people had, again, like what Seema was saying, people who got stuck, they had nobody to speak to. Whereas if you were traveling through an agent, I mean, we had agents who even knew how to bail you out just in case you had COVID overseas, you know. You know, so that kind of support, they could guide you, they could help you. So the travel agent, the physical travel agent, the offline travel agent, I think became even more important. And now going forward, I think we've, you know, your traveler has become used to it. There is still a lot of confusion on protocols. You know, what when I'm traveling to Sri Lanka, what is exactly required for Thailand? You really need to be able to pick up that phone and to be able to speak to somebody instead of reading up and taking that risk, especially when you're traveling overseas. Coming back to, again, exactly what you asked, I think one thing that we were already moving to was that travel was moving to not remaining a luxury, but becoming a necessity, especially with this whole YOLO generation, you only live once, the younger generation with double income, no kids, those kind of categorizations that we always discuss. I think the pandemic really made us all realize the fragility of life. You don't know what's next. You don't know what's going to really happen to you. So travel has definitely moved from being a luxury to a necessity. It's something people have read, you know, they want to do it. The luxury traveler, like I said before, really was the mainstay of the travel tourism industry for the last 2 years. As markets are now going to looking at opening up with all various destinations overseas and India, that are now ready to fly. I think Indians are going to fill up literally everywhere. The domestic hotels are going to be filled by us. Overseas, while of course Russia, Ukraine is not a good story, but all the Russians who were traveling to Maldives are no longer doing so. So the Maldives hotels have dropped rates. So it's going to be Indians traveling everywhere. The bigger chunk of our travelers have still not stepped out. It was the HNI luxury traveler who was, traveling at this point. But now is when the big travel is opening up. People are going to travel to within India, to Thailand, Sri Lanka, Dubai, whatever is open. In terms of itineraries, I think safety, security is going to be pretty much it. As long as the protocols are very, very clear, I think that's one demand that we are going to have from the market, especially overseas, as to what is really required. But I think in a few months from now, it looks like 2019 going to 2022, Indians are very resilient. We are soon going to forget 2021, and hopefully we'll have some good years coming up for the travel industry.
I'm into that. So Meeta, how do you break the clutter in digital world through your communication? Is it price, product, or place?
I don't think price, product, or place are mutually exclusive, right? We don't do as much in the digital space as, obviously people that are selling multiple properties, we're selling the country. Everybody else is doing their marketing, we can piggyback on them because it's like you can go to this website or you can go to that website. But making sure that our messaging is taking everything that everybody has and putting it together, obviously, from our point of view to the clients that they book through us, is the key here. So I think the answer is it's not mutually exclusive. It never can be, because something will always appeal to someone in a different combination.
And I think travel is so personal. It can never be a cookie cutter approach
Correct.
for all your clients. It has to be personalized.
So this is also very interesting, the digital space. It's about posturing. So that's what most of the DMCs, because you don't put your points out, you don't put your prices and things like that out. You posture yourself as a certain company, exclusive, individualistic, and things like that. So this and I find especially DMC social media very, very interesting, and their newsletters. It's a case study in itself, because they can't do, for them reposting is not such a good idea, and most independent entrepreneurship is all about how much attention to detail you can give a particular agency from abroad. And if there is an independent entrepreneur here and an independent entrepreneur there, they need to connect at a more layered and in a more deeper level, so that you're on the same page.
Right.
Like she said, farming and hunting. I was across in a conversation where one company believed that hunting is a great way into conservation, and the other person was exactly the opposite. And suddenly they discovered, oh my God, no, you're not. So it's that kind of posturing which is very essential, that you put this out where your social media marketing is concerned in terms of digital presence. That's what you would probably be putting out there.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up, and just one last quick question from Seema. I just wanted to ask you, how has India done as a source market for preferred hotels? And what do you think the way forward? Has India been a bit of a source market, or in the last year or so?
Yeah. In fact, 2021, I think, with Maldives being open, Dubai being open, we saw some great numbers going there. Europe, slowly, when it started to open up, Switzerland had some good numbers, France, and UK. And post 8th of November, we saw some good outbound into US markets as well. Christmas, New Year saw some good numbers on the outbound based on just the air corridors or the travel bubbles that were operating. I think people are waiting for 27th of March for the flights to start. Outbound is going to come back. I do want to, a word of caution. Like you said, domestic will remain. It will remain, but I think the size will shrink, because people who've not gone out for 2 years will want to go out.
Absolutely.
So the amount of repeat travel that was happening within domestic, so hotels also need to pivot their strategy accordingly. What's the mix between inbound, outbound going to be, etc. So we're seeing some great queries for 2022. In fact, going into 2023 as well. Into some of the markets I named, but also now Asia Pacific opening up, Indonesia, Malaysia, some as far out as Mexico. So I think it's a great mix, and people have taken the last 2 years to research to see where they want to go when all becomes normal and opens up. So yes, outbound's here to stay, and it's going to become only bigger.
Amazing. So we're going to wrap up with that. And of course, the travel industry has been at the forefront of digital innovation and continues to be transformed at an exponential rate across the globe. In the post-COVID world, evolving digital technology is impacting how people travel, demanding tourism businesses to transform the way they operate to provide a more enhanced consumer experience. A big thank you to all our panelists, and thank you, audience. Thank you, ladies who lead. This was an amazing chatting with all of you, and I know it's going to be an exciting year for travel for all of us, and hopefully this year is going to be the big one. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.